You're listening to the Get Over It Media Podcast. I am your host, Art of the Rhyme. Here at Get Over It Media, we are a pro-truth podcast. So while we do not always keep it black, we do always keep it 100. So this is part 2 of to comply or not to comply. That is the question. So first of all, let's start with what is compliance. Compliance is acting in accordance with or giving in to a request, wish, or demand. It is acquiescence. The word comply is to act in accordance with a request, an order, or a rule. So, example, in other words, when you come to a stop sign, if you stop, you are complying with the established rules of the road. So, listen, and it involves choice. And choice is always empowering to the individual. So yesterday, part 1, we talked about the doctor that was questioned in front of his house. And I said how that video will never go viral or enter to the mainstream in any significant manner. If somehow it did make it into a newscast, it would not, first of all, it wouldn't play in a loop. Secondly, it would not be shown so as to promote compliance. That aspect would be muted. It would be shown as another nigga being harassed. That's how they would present it. They, the liberals and the media, they don't want us to see that compliance actually does work. What they want is to present a problem with no solution. They want us to believe that every time we are stopped, it is an unjust act by the police, that it is a form of oppression. So when we don't comply, it is seen as resistance to said oppression. So then my resistance becomes reasonable and acceptable, and it is something that is to be celebrated. That's even if I am resisting an otherwise lawful arrest. For example, Jacob Blake. His resistance was not to oppression. It was a resistance to law and order. And this is where we are culturally now. We're at a stage that whenever an individual is non-compliant, they by proxy are cast into the role of hero, and the law officer is cast into the role of villain. And so that the resistor, he becomes Tupac reborn all of a sudden. Now, what comes out of that? Comes out of that is that the detrimental behavior and attitudes towards law and order again become celebrated. So here's the issue. We have to be careful with the images that they keep presenting to us over and over again. They will never show that compliance actually does work. Again, they want to present a problem with no real solution to it. So what comes out of this? First of all, what comes out of it is traumatization. A traumatized people become emotionally stunted. For example, in the MK Ultra programming, trauma is a key component to the process. And for those who know, if you know, you know. The entire ordeal that we're being subjected to is predictive programming. We are losing our ability to tell right from wrong because we lump it all in one basket. And what is happening is we are developing a disdain for law, order, and authority, especially male authority. Talked about this in part 1. As I've stated, a people that that is in that condition can never build a culture nor sustain a community. So we started off, we mentioned about the power of choice earlier. If you cannot self-govern by choice, you can never properly preside over a household or a community if you can't self-govern. And at the root of that inability to self-govern, you'll find a sense of entitlement. That the rules somehow don't apply to you because your situation is unique and different. For example, the notion that we as blacks are the only people group that have been done wrong. And then out of that comes the asinine, insipid position that blacks cannot be racist. Again, that's dangerous because what it does is it justifies heinous acts on our part against other groups where you're going around and you beat up little old white ladies and nobody says a thing about that. There's no way you can justify that. No one should be okay with that. Quote a Bible scripture, Proverbs 25:28. It says, "He that hath no rule over his own spirit is like a city that is broken down and without walls." He that hath no rule over his own spirit is like a city that's broken down and without walls. You can't self-govern. You can't sustain a community. You can't build a culture without the ability, without discipline, self-discipline. Another example of a problem with no solution is the population argument, where they talk about how blacks are only 13% of the population, and yet they talk about the numbers of blacks that are being killed. That's a problem with no solution. Why? Because I can't stop being black. And so if by virtue of my being black, if that's the flashpoint, there's no solution to that. And they purposely present it that way, continued trauma. So that my natural reaction is that I can only live in fear and trepidation. And that's whenever I'm stopped by the police, I automatically assume that my life is in danger. And when that happens, I surrender the power of choice. I want you to notice that argument is the one that liberals present. And it presents you as a victim so that your behavior and your character doesn't even matter. So how I live by choice has no real impact. It doesn't matter. And as I previously stated in other podcasts, that has a cascading effect. It fosters a do as thou wilt mentality. And for those who know, that's Luciferian. On the other hand, likewise, I would also avoid the argument that says that blacks are only 13% of the population, yet they commit over 52% or whatever it is of the violent crimes. That is also a bad argument. Because whenever you start off trying to quantify a problem solely by race, more often than not, you will end up in a racist place. And so it lends credence and justification to the maltreatment of blacks when stopped and arrested. It dulls other groups' ability to see and to hear. So you don't want to put that argument out there. So both arguments coming from the left and the right are problems with no solutions. What you want to do is you want to look at encounters. Because if you look at encounters, then we can develop a context for the numbers and events that are happening. When you look at violent crimes, you'll find that that's broken down by gender. And it's by males and single males, those that are unattached. The Bible says it's not good for a man to be alone, to be unattached. So, what is the solution? Well, again, as we stated, we have to be careful of the images that are being presented to us. Why are they presenting this to me? What is it they want me to see? And what is the reaction they want me to have? Currently, what we're experiencing, it is intentional and it is systemic. In every system, well, first of all, America's undergoing a radical transformation, right? Even as we speak, that's socially and economically, culturally, and in every system, there's always going to be a group at the bottom. We've talked about this before. America has a caste system, and I'm MAGA, and I'm saying this. Um, America has a caste system, and in every system, someone is going to be at the bottom. Um, I was reading about Leon Trotsky. For those of you who know, Leon Trotsky was one of the architects of the Bolshevik Revolution. He was a triple OG in that movement. And he talked about how he ended up writing a book called A Revolution Betrayed. I believe that's the title. And he noticed that after they came to power, the same problems existed. There was an inequality that everyone is equal, but some are more equal than others. And he talked about shoes. He talked about how, I know, what does this got to do with compliance? He talked about shoes. He talked about how someone decided who got shoes and when. Now, everybody's going to get shoes unless they run out, but everybody's going to get shoes. But someone is deciding who gets the shoes and when and what quality shoes they get because all the shoes weren't created equal. It's like somebody's going to get Nikes, somebody's going to get these bubblegum tennis shoes. And so he saw the folly of it. And again, if you can read up on Trotsky, he began to speak out about it. They exiled him. They exiled him. Continued to speak out, and finally they just went on and bumped him off. They had him assassinated. But the point is that in every system, someone's going to be at the bottom. The way things are being orchestrated now, blacks are going to be at the bottom of the new system as well as the old system. They've got us focusing on things that, again, problems with no solutions. And we have to pay attention to what's being presented to us. So how do we overcome this? One, again, we talked about it, is accountability, self-accountability, and being responsible for your actions, because that has a cascading effect. Not just when you deal with the police, but when you deal within your own community and with others outside your community. Being courteous, respectful, and kind. Again, it has rippling effects throughout the community. There is also a economic shift taking place. America is moving away from the dollar, and we're getting ready to go to the digital dollar. And right now, there's a tremendous opportunity and a transfer of wealth. Blacks are about to be frozen out of that as well. You go back to the 40 acres and a mule. I believe that was actual legislation, not just a colloquialism. We were denied that. The New Deal under FDR, there were provisions in there that excluded domesticates and porters. Well, what were two jobs that blacks could readily get? Domesticates and porters. The redlining issue, forced out of that. And now we're going to be squeezed out of this quantum financial system because they got us focusing on problems that have no solutions. I'm going to end this here for now. We'll probably do a part 3. I get more into this when I talk about the Floyd verdict. So that's a podcast that you want to listen to. So we're going to end it here. Thank you for listening. And that's what's up. Buckle up, Betty Lou. It's going to be a bumpy ride.